Hi my people, how are you doing? Oh, today is another day and we are going to be discussing something very interesting actually. Thank you so much for tuning into my channel and for continuing to support me. Those of you who have been with me for years, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You are my heroes and I see you're the long-suffering people with me. But today we're going to be discussing something of interest to all of us. I believe if you live in the diaspora and also if you're living in Africa, it's important for you to be aware of what's going on. The one word on the lips of most people here in this country is one word. Think about it. It's migrants. Illegal migrants. Illegal migrants. You know that the UK and Europe generally are now being forced to vote very far right. When we talk about very far right, we're talking about conservative parties who believe that migration needs to be stemmed, especially of people who do not look like them or who do not have a background similar to theirs, especially when it comes to religion. So 36 million Africans are forcefully displaced. Which countries have the highest level of forcefully displaced migrants? All right, so now what else is important and what else is interesting? So we have internally displaced persons and we have those who are also seeking refugee status, and therefore their total comes to 6 million. So they actually top the list. The Democratic Republic of Congo, one of the most richest countries in Africa, actually has 6 million refugees. In fact, I can hardly see anymore, you guys. This is actually getting pretty bad. I need to wear my glasses all the time, yeah? The percentage of the population that is displaced within DRC is actually 7%. The country that has the highest level of displaced population is actually South Sudan, with 40% of their population displaced, and then followed by the Central African Republic, which has about 27% of their population displaced, Somalia 23%, Eritrea 18%. I don't think any of us from are quite surprised by these figures. We also have Nigeria. Nigeria has 2% of their population who are displaced generally. Nigeria, the internally displaced people in Nigeria are 3 million, and of those refugees and asylum seekers from Nigeria, about 424,000. Okay, this is data coming from UNHCR, IDM, and the World Bank. Okay. Yes, I'm just trying to look for the actual date for this particular data. Most of this data is from between 2019 to 2022, so it's pretty recent. So basically, why are people displaced in Africa? What is causing the displacement? Basically, there are three main reasons why people are displaced in Africa. And the reason I remove my glasses is because I see far. And I don't see, it's interesting. So anyway, the reason why we have forced displacement trends going on in Africa, the blue line is basically conflict, the red line are refugees, and the third line is asylum seekers. So we have conflict, internal displaced people, and you see they're the majority. Those internally displaced people are the majority, and they live within the continent of Africa. The rest of them are refugees and asylum seekers, and you can see that those numbers are very, very few compared to those people who are remaining on the continent. All right, that was quite a very interesting finding for me, that most people who are displaced from Africa are living within the continent and remain within the continent. The numbers and the proportions have continued to grow from between the last 10 years, from 2011 to 2022. The number of people in millions was from around 10 million to about almost 35 million. So we're looking at about 10% of the population to over a third of the population are now, displaced or internally displaced for some reason. And so many people are actually leaving because of those reasons, okay? You hear about the kidnappings in, for example, Nigeria. You hear about the conflict in South Sudan. You hear about the conflict in the Congo. All of these are causing people to become displaced. You hear about the conflict in Niger, Burkina Faso, in Mali. All of that is contributing to people getting onto the Mediterranean Ocean and heading off abroad or going to other countries within Africa. The country of Kenya has actually been a host of internally displaced people and especially externally displaced people, refugees and asylum seekers. For the longest time, we had refugee camps. the Kakuma and Dadaab refugee camps, which were eventually closed and for which I used to do some work. They, hosted refugee seekers from the Sudan and also from Somalia. So those who are internally displaced because of conflict, because you can't expect people to remain where they feel unsafe. The important thing is to make sure that people feel safe. People are not moving just because they just want economic freedom. It's mostly because of security. Okay, so they say that, for example, with Ethiopians, for example, why are Ethiopians displaced? They continue to be forcefully displaced because of the conflict that displaced them from their houses and their livelihoods. 1.5 million Ethiopians were displaced prior to the conflict in Tigray. And however, the Ethiopians face multiple drivers of instability which require ongoing attention. So basically also instability is an issue where you don't have constant peace. With South Sudan, for example, the reason for their conflict is that they have not had presidential elections since independence in 2011. All right? So instead of that, in Sudan, they have a string of broken peace agreements and ostensible coalition governments which have perpetuated competition by rival militia and a war economy. So Sudan, the problem with Sudan is that they have a war economy that is driven by instability and violence. Roughly 20% of the increase on the whole continent comes from the Sudan. Burkina Faso. In the Burkina Faso has been in the limelight because of the recent, you heard about the military coup in Niger and in Burkina Faso and in Mali. Burkina Faso specifically, we have a gentleman right there called Traore, who basically is the current, who is the military leader currently leading the country. And the reason why there have been historically a high level of displacement in Burkina Faso is because there have been militant Islamists who have been displacing people in Burkina Faso for a long period of time. Notably, they talk about violent effects linked to militant Islamic groups, notably the Makina, they call the Makina Liberation Front, MLF, and the Islamic State of the Greater Sahara, who are projected to increase by 140% this year. Fatalities have increased by 30%. These patterns have been replicated in Burkina Faso, Mali, and Niger. Now, let's not go into the reason why we actually have these militant groups and these terrorist groups in the Sahel region. That is a matter for another day. But the fact is that they have been there, these militant groups, and they have caused people to run away from their homes and to abandon their livelihoods. So, Nigeria. When it comes to Nigeria, we have more than 250,000 Nigerians displaced in the last year. And this was a result of escalating instability caused by gang criminality. So we hear a lot from our fellow Nigerian YouTubers who talk about the gangs and the crime and the kidnappings in Nigeria, the bandits in the northwest of the country, where more than 110,000 people in northwest Nigeria are internally displaced. Remember Bring Back Our Girls by Michelle Obama, where we had so many girls who were kidnapped from schools. So basically, DRC has also been undergoing the same problem of forcefully displaced people. 6.3 million. 6.3 million. That's that's 10% of the UK population. Yeah? Much of the recent displacement is a result of instability in the east of the country, driven by illicit mining, regional rivalries, and a proxy war between Uganda and Rwanda. So, neighboring countries can also contribute towards the internal displacement of a country, and therefore, there's been some sort of proxy war between Uganda and Rwanda, and we are hoping that, that is going to stop at some point. So, Mozambique is another country, which is part of the Southern Africa Development Community, SADC, and the Rwandan forces a year ago liberated Mozambique, and basically because of the Al-Shabaab, they have also experienced this is Mozambique. It has caused 116,000 Mozambicans to flee their homes in the past year. By the way, guys, I should tell you some stories about these countries that I've visited before. Mozambique, beautiful country, guys, with one of the most beautiful coastlines. I know I digress. I believe it was the 1990s, we were actually avoiding the coastline because of the fact that during the wars and during these militia you know, because of the militant forces, the militant group called Alui Suna Wajama. Oh my God, how do you even say it? It's Ahlu Sunna Wajama, ASWJ, locally known as Al Shabaab. Okay, so basically, locally known as the Al Shabaab. So rather than confront the SADC and the Rwandan forces, the Ahlus Sunna wa Jama, Al Shabaab fighters dispersed to other parts of northern Mozambique where they were ratcheted up in attacks on local communities. Okay, so they were attacking local civilian communities, and it caused 116,000 Mozambicans to flee their homes in the past year, adding to the 881,000 Mozambicans who have been forcefully displaced since the Al-Shabaab violence began in 2017. So almost 1 million Mozambicans have actually been displaced. A beautiful country with beautiful, you know, beautiful ocean front. Oh boy, let me not talk about it. Their food in Mozambique. Ooh, beautiful. And when I talk about these countries, it doesn't mean that all these countries are at war, that you cannot go and visit them. Yes, you can go and visit those countries, but you need to be aware about the fact that there are very many people who are internally displaced. All right? And I should not talk about internal displacement without talking about countries such as Somalia. Well-known fact that Somalia also has 2 million people who are internally displaced. Nigeria has 3 million IDPs. Internally displaced as IDPs. Burkina Faso 1 million, Central African Republic 600,000, Cameroon, Mozambique, Eritrea. But Eritrea has about 500,000 refugees and asylum seekers, and Mali, Chad, Cote d'Ivoire, Niger. Total displaced people in Africa are 27 million. 27,282,000. Africa has many IDPs. The refugees and asylum seekers are about 8 million, and the total comes to about 35 million people. Total population of Africa is 1.3 billion people. So that's approximately what? 1.3 billion, that's probably about maybe 20% of the African population. Yeah, because if we have 35 million, no, it's not 35 million. 35 million people out of 1.3 billion in Africa. It's a very small population of Africans. One of the things that we need to be aware of is that in Europe, for example, we see that people talking about, you know, stop the boats, send these people back to Rwanda, put them on the planes, like for example in the UK, we don't want these people here. But I want to also clarify that the incoming asylum applications in Italy, for example, between 2000 and 2022 are mostly non-African, by the way. Yeah, they actually talk about the new applications for asylum are mostly from Bangladesh, Pakistan, Egypt, Tunisia, Georgia, Peru, Ukraine, Morocco, Afghanistan, Nigeria. So those are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So the top 10 countries, okay, that applied for the new applications for asylum are from Bangladesh, Pakistan. Okay, we're talking about Asia, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Afghanistan. And then the other one is Ukraine. And then in Africa, we have Morocco, Tunisia, Egypt. And then Eastern Europe, we have Georgia. And Southern America, we have Peru. The next, from 11, number 11, we are looking at Colombia, Venezuela, El Salvador, and all these other countries. And then from Africa, we have countries such as Ivory Coast, Somalia, Mali, Guinea, Senegal, Cameroon. Okay, so what we're saying is this. The least number of asylum seekers and refugees in Europe, for example, and in the West are from Africa. Majority of them come from Asia, mostly from Asia, North Africa, northern part of Africa, such as Egypt, Tunisia, okay? And when we see this kinds of data, it's important, even if you go to the streets, you're going to see that the majority of the people who are asylum seekers and refugees, for example, here in Wales, a majority of them are not Africans from Africa. So the idea of sending migrants back, or illegal migrants, to Rwanda makes you wonder, because majority of those ones actually are from Asia. They want to actually send Asians, Afghanistanis, Pakistanis to Rwanda, and this is one of the biggest problems, because majority of internally displaced people, asylum seekers and refugees are actually not from Africa. Yes, we do have Africans, but they're the least. They're the least in terms of numbers. Majority of the Africans who come to work abroad, most of them actually work in the care sector, in the security sector. Majority of them are actually working. So I think it's very important to be able to distinguish the fact that internally displaced people from Africa remain in Africa. That's the majority of them. And I've shown you from that graph that the majority of them remain in Africa. And it's only a very small proportion of those ones who apply for asylum, and another very small proportion of them who are given refugee status in different countries. So let's get that one straight. I hope you understood that one, and let's stop it here. I think this is a topic we can continue to discuss. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you so much for listening. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. My information is from World Data Info on asylum applications and foreign refugees in Italy. And also, like I mentioned before, my other data source is also from the Africa Center for Strategic Studies. So it's important to get the information correct before you just listen to the media blindly. You know, you listen to the media, just take all the information and just assume that we're having a windfall of Africans coming to. You know how hard it is to even get that visa to come to Europe, and how difficult it is. Who has the money to even cross those oceans? It's very few people. Majority of those who are actually crossing are people who have access to funding and finance. Yeah, so many Africans are still within Africa, languishing within Africa. So let us help to build Africa for Africans, and let us help those people who are internally displaced within Africa, you know, to go back to their homes and to have security. The thing that we need to invest most in is in ensuring security for our continent, so that we can reduce the number of IDPs within Africa and those who are forced to leave their homes and flee. Thank you very much and for listening. Remember to subscribe, and remember to put a thumbs up to the video, and yeah, let's look forward to talking to you next time. Cheers.